Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? I do have a volume button that I can turn it up. Good morning. My name is Lee Tillery. I am the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of High Point. I want to welcome you to Blair Park. And on behalf of the City of High Point and our department, I want y'all to know how honored we are to have this marker on site here at Blair Park. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy we're able to celebrate that. I want to give a lot of thanks to the High Point Museum, Edith and Mary and the library and all their crews for what they did. And of course, the North Carolina African American Commission for making this happen as well. It is an honor to have this marker here on site. I'd also like to recognize two High Point City Councilmen in here, Michael Holmes and Monica Peterson. If you would just, I think we have a few more coming, right? Monica's, yeah, a few more. Cyril will be here in a minute. But anyway, on behalf of the city, I just want to say thank you, and we're glad to be here. As you may or may not know, the High Point Parks and Recreation still manages 2 golf courses, and you typically don't see that in municipalities around. So we're so fortunate to have 2 beautiful courses in Oak Hollow and Blair Park, and it's an honor to be able to manage both of them and be in this department. As you may know, in Parks and Recreation, one of the things that drew me to Parks and Recreation when I started was the idea of inclusivity, the idea that everybody's allowed, everybody is wanted, everybody's invited to every program, park, and facility that we have. And I can't help but to think when looking at this program with Dr. Creft and Dr. Little and Dr. Simkins, how they paved the way for that to happen here in High Point. So it's an honor to be part of this process, and it's an honor again for us to have this marker here in the city of High Point and at Blair Park Golf Course. I'd like to introduce now Marion Innovet with the High Point Museum for her remarks.
Thanks, Lee. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. So I just want to recognize a few people, and Lee and Tracy and their staff, Colton from Parks and Rec. They were really instrumental in getting this installed. We can't do that. And also our transportation people who okayed the location. Yeah, we got a lot of loyal cars. Good that this is in a great location, bad that for us today. I also want to recognize the Secretary of the Department of Cultural and Natural Resources. Sorry, I put cultural first. Reed Wilson. I hope everybody gets to meet him. And I also want to thank the friends and family who are here, Phyllis and Glenn, who you all will meet and hear remarks from shortly. And not least at all, and I'm glad Adrian is here, I want to thank Angela Thorpe and Adrian at the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, because they encouraged us to apply for this. Their staff, really great, very helpful, and we appreciate it. And one of the things that occurred to me while I was doing the application was this whole trail is about everyday people, and the Crefts and Dr. Simkins and Dr. Little, they were everyday people. They were professional men, they were active in their communities, but they were everyday people. And this whole trail is about moments when everyday people said enough and ran to the fight. And so I encourage everybody to follow this trail, learn about these moments and the stories behind them. So I really appreciate what you guys did. So I think right now we have remarks from Carl Little, Danny Creft, and then Phyllis Bridges is going to talk for the Simkins family. Right. Carl?
Thank you. Everybody, how y'all doing? Thank you for coming out today. I'm Dr. Carl Little, and I'm here on behalf of the Littles. First, I would like to say thanks to Dr. Creft for bringing my father to High Point. He was very instrumental in getting my dad started. Uh, I'm at a loss for words. Just thank you for being here. Uh, Melanie, you got something you want to say?
Thank you, everyone. My name is Melanie Little Casey. We're so thankful for this recognition. It's such an honor. We are just elated. I live in Chicago, Illinois. We wouldn't miss this for the world. And so thank you, High Point. Thank you for recognizing my father, my uncle, Dr. Hubert Creft, and their dear, dear friend, Dr. George Simkins. This is quite an honor. We have my sister Judy here as well, Judy Little Mills, and so, and my husband is here. But thank you all. I just really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, and first of all, I want to give honor to God. Thank Him for all of us being here today on this beautiful day that He's given us. And I just want to say that I'm a preacher, and I know Melanie is the wife of a preacher, and I don't have a problem with speaking, so I'm going to try not to be long-winded, but I want to just say I thank God for my father, who was, let's see, I was 1 year old when he did this wonderful thing. Dr. Little and Dr. Simkins. I don't remember when that happened, of course, at 1 year old, but I do remember when I was a little bit older, caddying for him at different golf courses, and that's where I fell in love with the game. And it's kind of a complete circle because I now work here at Blair Park as a ranger. My boss is Johnny back here, and his boss is Steve, and I want to thank them for just giving me an opportunity without knowing that at all. And I also wanted to say that I would be remiss if I don't mention this. Now, I know my father and Dr. Little. I don't know Dr. Simkins, but I do know that they were both very humble men. Dr. Little, I remember him, I'd be with him, I used to work with him, work for him. He would basically just give me a handout, to be up there. But he would walk up to anyone and with his fists balled up, pin that person maybe a $20 bill, not wanting any kind of recognition. And I'm saying this to say that the only thing, let me go back one little step. I want to thank the African American Heritage Association, the High Point Museum, the Civil Rights Commission, Miss Bridges. Mostly, you're doing a great thing. And one day we'll be having a marker for you out here. All of this, because Marcus Garvey said that a people without knowledge of its past are like a tree without roots. So I think it's very important for people to know what their past is. And now that gets me to the point, my final point that I'm going to say is, I'm very proud of this marker. The only disappointment that I have is their names are not mentioned on it. I don't know if there's some kind of stipulation in what can be put on the historical markers, but going back to my uncle and father being humble, I'm not going to press on that. But I think it would be a good idea to have their names, something, maybe a little plaque under the bottom with their names mentioned on it. And with that, I'll pass the mic. Amen.
Can everybody hear me? Yep. Let me see. Raining there.
All right. Okay. Going back to Carl Little's family, and where's Glenn? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at this present time, Carl Little's business is probably the oldest African American business in High Point. Am I right about that, Glenn? So I think you'll be celebrating a big anniversary next year, so we're going to start preparing for that. The Simkins family, Dr. Simkins' daughter and son are traveling, so they wasn't able to come to High Point today, but they did send some remarks for me to speak on behalf of the Simkins family. The family of George C. Simkins Jr. would like to extend a heartfelt thanks to the North Carolina Civil Rights Trail, the City of High Point, and the High Point Museum for their special recognition. What happened at Blair Park Golf Course 68 years ago was a significant part of Black history which gave momentum to the Civil Rights movement. The tribute to our father and his good friends, Dr. Perry Little and Dr. H.H. Creft, is the testament to the courage and determination these medical professionals and civil rights pioneers showed in their tireless fight against racial discrimination. Even after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, municipality spaces like the golf courses and other public recreational facilities remained segregated across the South for decades. George Simkins, Perry Little, and H.H. Creft gathered here on a crusade. They stood up to Jim Crow era laws and the city of High Point. Despite the consequences of their actions, they knew it would eventually end the long era of racial segregation at the golf course and others. Inspired by what happened in High Point, a year later, Dr. Simkins and 5 friends were arrested on trespassing charges for playing at the whites-only Gillespie Park Golf Course in Greensboro on December 7, 1955. Our father was thrilled when other golfers took part in the protest, and when the city of High Point finally allowed blacks to play at Blair Golf Course. They would celebrate another victory when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled all publicly funded recreational facilities across the country must be integrated. The success of desegregating this golf course drove our father and other civil rights activists to launch efforts to integrate more public facilities such as the city pools, tennis court, hospitals, and schools. At this core, George Simkins loved the game of golf and coming out on the course for a round with his friends. However, he was most passionate for fighting for civil rights. This marker symbolizes not just the sacrifices and accomplishments of George Simkins and his good friends, but also by African Americans who continue to fight for equality. Sincerely, Joanna Simkins Hollis and Chris Simkins, daughter and son of Dr. George C. Simkins Jr.
All right, and we've got one more speaker that's not on our program, and I hope that he's been told to be brief. Glenn Chavis, and he's going to remind us where a lot of people, of course, haven't heard of Dr. Creft and Dr. Simkins and Dr. Little. There was also another player in this, and Glenn's going to tell you about him.
No, and I want you to know what I'm about to say. There's no disrespect for the Creft family or the Little family. They played the golf, and all of a sudden Blair Park's become noticed. However, it was someone by the name of Reverend William McLeod. He's the one that made this possible. He was the only black on the Parks and Recs board at that time. And according to records, at a meeting, he asked, what crime have these black men committed? There were no answers because the chairman was making everything up about the Blair deed and all these laws that didn't exist. But he fought them. And as a result, this is here today. So don't ever forget that name. Okay, Reverend William McLeod. And this is the funny part about it. They found out there were 2 other ministers on the board. But found out, when you look into all the information, it had nothing to do with a white golf ball. It had everything to do with intimate social contact with black men and white women. They did not want that clubhouse with black men and white women in it. In the end, they integrated the clubhouse. Then they said, well, what are we going to do about the bathhouse? That means we're going to have to bathe with, shower with black men. Gave them 2 months to study it. Guess what? Came back 2 months later and decided to close the bathhouses rather than shower with black men. That's the part of the story that you haven't heard, but it's in the records. And I only speak the truth. Thank you.
And Glenn, it's in the application. So I want to introduce now Adrian Nerdy with the African American Heritage Commission, the North Carolina African American Commission, who made all of this possible.
Thank you, Marion. Everyone's able to hear me? All right. So good afternoon, everyone. As she stated, my name is Adrian Nearday, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Director of the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, and I'm incredibly honored to take part in today's ceremony. I bring you greetings from our Director of the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, Angela Thorpe, as well as the William G. Pomeroy Foundation, who are unfortunately unable to make it today. For those not familiar with the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, we serve with a mission to preserve, protect, and promote North Carolina African American history, art, and culture for all people. We are a division of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. We are a small team, and our work is broad. We work across the department and across the state, connecting and supporting folks who do all things African American history, art, and culture. This work includes some of our own initiatives, like the North Carolina Civil Rights Trail. The trail started in August of 2020 with a goal to mark 50 sites across the state by the end of 2023. We do this work with support from the William G. Pomeroy Foundation in partnership with the North Carolina Office of Archives of History and Visit North Carolina. This work began because we saw across the state that there was a real interest and need to mark this history. And what I think is most special about the trail is that we are joining and supporting communities to tell their own stories. Most every community in North Carolina has its own civil rights history. It's not like just your neighbors in Greensboro or towns like Durham, Raleigh, and Charlotte. It's places like here in High Point, North Carolina, where history was made, where everyday citizens came together to make a change in their community, to make Blair Park, the Gillespie Golf Course, one of the first municipal courses in North Carolina to fully integrate several years prior to the Greensboro sit-ins. It's a complicated history, and it's a tough history for many folks to think about, even still. But I cannot stress enough the importance of learning about it and its deep roots here in North Carolina. To quote James Baldwin, history does not refer merely or even principally to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and that history is literally present in all that we do. My hope today is that we are all able to find space to reflect and spend some time in community, but also deepen our understanding of those who fought for our civil rights and their legacies. If you are looking for more resources to learn more about civil rights history, specifically in North Carolina, I invite you to take a look at our website. It's aahc.nc.gov, or you can Google the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, where we have historical information and resources about how to apply for additional trail markers. Thank you to the descendants and the families of these courageous men, Mr. Carl Little, Mr. Danny Creft, and the Simkins family. Thank you for coming here for today and for sharing us your words. I really appreciate hearing from you. Also, thank you to the City of High Point, the Parks and Recreation Department, the High Point Museum, the Transportation Department, and everyone who works to create space for us to celebrate here in community today. Thank you all for joining us.
I think now we'd like to invite the family members, Edith and Dr. Wilson, to come up and make remarks and then dedicate it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Reed Wilson. I am the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. It is great to be with all of you here today. I bring you warm greetings from Governor Roy Cooper. A couple words about our department. We take care of the things that people love about our wonderful state, and it's literally from A to Z. We have art museums, and we have the zoo, not too far from here, and a whole bunch of other things in between: parks, aquariums, science museums, history museums, historic sites, the American Indian Heritage Commission, the State Library, the State Archives, the State Symphony, historic preservation, and there's more. But what I think is important about all these places and the ideas that they represent is they actually bring us all together as North Carolinians. They create a shared identity. I mean, when I'm at a history museum or hiking on a trail in a state park, we're all equal. We're all welcome there, and we provide common ground for folks. And I think having this marker here will also provide common ground and sort of a shared sense of history for people in High Point and others who happen to drive by. You know, this Civil Rights Trail, oh, and I should say, of course, the African American Heritage Commission is a really important part of our department as well. And they do a phenomenal job. They are small but mighty. They get so much done all around the state. And it was their idea to create this Civil Rights Trail marker to educate people about stories of courage and perseverance and faith to achieve civil rights. And some of these stories are well known, and some people have never heard of. And it's really important to bring those stories to light so people understand the courageous people who made a difference not only in their own lives, but for thousands of others to follow, millions of others to follow, really. And our department is committed to telling an inclusive, rich, diverse history of our state. We want to find as many interesting stories that reveal our shared past as we possibly can. And we're doing that not just through this commission, but also through our history museums, historic sites, our state parks, even the zoo. They all have history that took place there. And we're trying to make sure that people understand this sometimes complex history we have in this state. We're willing to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, like any other place, North Carolina has good, bad, and ugly history. And it's important for people to understand all of it, because if we understand that shared past, I think it helps us comprehend how we got to where we are today. And if we're paying attention to it, it helps us chart a brighter path for tomorrow, which is why this marker today that will be unveiled is so important, because people will learn something they didn't know about, and it happened right here. And as someone said earlier, just by, average people. But obviously they weren't average people, but they had an extra amount of courage. It took courage to do that day in December of 1954. And it took perseverance by the community to make it happen, that this would be open to anyone 15 months later. That may seem like a long time, but compared to some of the other things that have taken forever, 15 months was pretty quick, which means people were really working hard and working together and building community in support of equal rights for all. So I want to thank the family members, the community, for bringing this application to us. I want to thank not only the Heritage Commission, but they also have an advisory committee which reviews all the applications that come in. And Adrian mentioned we have a goal of 50 of these markers around the state. 25 have been approved so far, and I think we're almost up to 10 that are actually in the ground, which is great. And every one of these, when they go up, it's an amazing community celebration. It really brings people together. So I want to thank the commission. I want to thank the families. I want to thank the City of High Point Museum, Visit NC, and the Pomeroy Foundation for making all of this possible. This is a great day. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, and I'm going to get out of the way so we can get to the important thing of unveiling this important marker. Thank you.
fantastic, and we can't say how grateful we are for the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to come out, and Adrian particularly for Dr. Wilson. You couldn't be more right about their team. They're just incredible up there. So Edith, Dr. Wilson, family, everybody, so we can unveil this thing. Hey, glad you guys are here. Would you like me to?
Yeah, let's get it started up here.
I guess, yeah. Tell us when.
Okay.
Are we gonna do a countdown?
Count to 3. Sure. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, thank you all for coming today, and I know lots of people want to get pictures, so you're welcome to stay as long as you want to get all the photos, and thank you.